Kmart has a low price on Duracell alkaline batteries.
Everything I'm buying for Christmas needs batteries. The video game needs batteries. The robot needs
Mom,
batteries.
don't forget I need batteries.
His batteries don't seem run down.
Let's get this 3-pack of Fuji film. They give you 12 bonus shots.
Why 12?
I guess one for each day of Christmas.
Well, if there are 12 days of Christmas, how come we get one day off from work?
Kmart lets you get into the joy of giving.
Not to mention the joy of saving.
What in the world happened to Kmart? Depending on how old you are, you may remember there was a time where Kmarts were all over the place. You couldn't go into a neighboring town without seeing, well, that town's own Kmart. For a couple of decades, particularly the 70s and 80s, they were the equivalent to the modern-day Walmart, which is in every shopping complex nowadays. But, why did Kmart die? What happened? Where did they go? Well, if you ask most people, they'll say Walmart killed them, but that's not really correct. Because, for one thing, in their market, there's plenty of room for Walmart competitors. Target coexists with them and competes with them. Why couldn't Kmart do that? Well, the truth is that Walmart didn't so much kill Kmart. Rather, Kmart gave Walmart and Target knives and told them to stab them in the gut repeatedly. And then took those knives back and stabbed themselves in the gut repeatedly. Really, Kmart's downfall is their own fault, and no one else's. It's embarrassing. Let's talk about it, though, because it is pretty interesting and quite in-depth. It's also a part of the economic market I have yet to discuss, which is, of course, general retail. The brand and store, known as Kmart, actually dates all the way back to 1899. But back then they weren't called Kmart, obviously. That's a very modern name. They were known as Kresge, founded by a man named S.S. Kresge. But to be honest, their early days are a little irrelevant to their actual fall. I thought about going into detail about Kresge and that chain of stores that resulted, but the truth is that it has little to do with Kmart. So let's just skip ahead, shall we? The first store that was named Kmart opened on January 25th, 1962, in San Fernando, California. But this first outing wasn't built from the ground up to be a Kmart. That was decided very late in the process. Originally, it was going to be another Kresge store, and the first Kmart opened just 6 months before the first Walmart opened. The first Kmart that was built from the ground up to be a Kmart, with 80,000 square feet, opened on March 1st, 1962, in Garden City, Michigan. And this process was spearheaded by a man named Harry B. Cunningham. Both he, as well as Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, were inspired by a different chain of stores entirely, known as Ann and Hope. It was a Rhode Island-based retailer that pioneered practices that are common in what are known as big box stores. Now, what the heck is a big box store? Now, in order to explain Kmart's downfall, you have to fully understand what the heck a Kmart is. And by default, understand what a Walmart is, or a Target is, or any of the other ones in between. There are a lot of stores that are categorized under what are known as big box outlets, and they're sometimes called things like hyperstores, supercenters, superstores, or a mega store, because retail chains are much like Digimon, in that they have very routinely overly exaggerated definitions. But what defines a big box store is generally the size. They're big. Very big, but they're pretty normal nowadays. Generally, they're part of a chain, and underneath the term big box, there are two different categories: general merchandise and specialty stores. Specialty stores include things like Home Depot, or Lowe's, or IKEA, or Best Buy, which they're large and have a lot of different items, but they specialize in a very specific niche part of the market. Home Depot is like, well, home supplies and renovation equipment, whereas something like Best Buy is electronics. General merch, however, is, well, general, and that's where Kmart fell. Like Walmart and Target, they sell a whole wide array of different things, of varying degrees of relevance, from clothes to electronics to toys to outdoor supplies to fishing equipment, groceries, you name it, they probably got it. That's the whole point of the general merchandise big box model. Big box stores generally have a pretty consistent layout, in that they're large, freestanding, and kind of look like warehouses, to be honest. They typically sit in the middle of a very large parking lot, so there's plenty of room for customers to park, and their floor space is enormous to encompass as many different items as possible. And they are, in effect, the successors to the old-school department store. It was once a time where shopping isn't like it is now. Whereas you can walk into a store and just get whatever you want and go up and check out. Well, once, department stores, which had evolved from the classic mom-and-pop market, had a whole host of staff that would help you find certain items. Big boxes still have staff, but less, and they don't necessarily have to help customers get their items because, well, that kind of saves money in the long run. You don't need the extra staff to do that, and it's more convenient for the customer too, because they just be in and out. The whole point of a big box is that it's a one-stop shop kind of deal. You know they have pretty much everything you could possibly need, so you go in, and, well, get it there. Why go anywhere else? It's more convenient if it's all in one place. Plus, the other thing about this model is that because they sell so much stuff, and people like convenience, that it's possible to upsell certain items, but actually sell others at a loss. Now, why would a store want to do that? Well, those kind of deals attract customers into the store, who will buy things to get the deal, but possibly, and usually, buy other things which the store is selling for a profit. You see how this works now? Regardless, Kmart, as a general retailer, was once in the mix of the big box stores, and was once one of the most dominant, in fact. A total of 18 Kmarts would open up in 1962 alone, and during that time, the idea of putting food in the same big box store wasn't actually considered, so Kmart had their own brand of Kmart supermarkets that focused on that element, and those also opened during that decade. And at first, Kmart did really well, like really well. They actually put plenty of other competitors out of business during the 1970s. And at the time, they fell under the ownership of the original Kresge company, which did own several other stores. The original Kresge shops, as well as Jupiter Discount stores, which is a deep discount outfit. This all blended together beautifully at the time because every single element of the overall parent company didn't compete with itself. Kmart did not compete with Jupiter stores or Kresge's, and vice versa, and Kresge and Jupiter didn't compete either. They did compete with their competition, however, and other chains started to struggle in the wake of the mighty K. Kmart was doing so well that it became the dominant franchise underneath the Kresge store roster, and as such, in 1977, the SS Kresge Company changed their name to the Kmart Corporation. And in 1981, the 2,000th Kmart store opened. By the end of that same year, there were 2,055 stores across North America. And by 1987, the company decided to focus purely on Kmart, selling the remaining 76 Kresge and Jupiter stores, which would all eventually be discontinued. They began experimenting with co-branding in 1985. Some of the Kmarts had an in-store cafeteria where people could buy food while they shopped, and the one in Canton, Michigan was converted into a Wendy's, which was pretty cool actually. And until 1990, Kmart was the second largest retailer in the United States, just after Sears. But what was really the key to their success? What were they doing that was so right? Now, to be honest, at first, it was because there just weren't a lot of stores like Kmart at the time. When they first started out, they were very unique and didn't have a lot of competition. Big box, as a thing, was a, well, new thing. So often, Kmarts would be put in places where there was not a single other big box location around. There wasn't a neighboring Walmart. They had started in the southern United States. As such, Kmart didn't really have to worry about competition all that much. And people went there because, well, it was a big box store and it was convenient. The same reason people go to Walmart or Target now. But it's not like they didn't do other things. They messed around a bit and even offered things like exclusive deals. Because the one thing about big box stores that everyone knows is that, well, they often offer things at a discount. Very good discounts, in fact. And in Kmart's case, their most famous way of offering discounts to the customer was the Blue Light Special. This was a sales promotion that occurred within the Kmarts, but only for a short period of time within the store's hours. It wasn't an all-day thing. It only happened at certain times of the day. It was called a blue light special because it was advertised utilizing a rotating blue light, kind of like you'd see on a police car. It was also announced over the store's public address system with the phrase, "Attention Kmart shoppers," which eventually would kind of reach meme status in popular culture. The original concept for the blue light special was the idea of pushing a limited time offer to sell slower moving merchandise, stuff that people wouldn't normally buy. But if you offered it for a brief window at a really good price, people were well more inclined to buy it. And it meant that a lot of people were spending more time in Kmart stores because they wanted to get the blue light special. It was first started all the way back in 1965, but throughout the 80s, Kmart started suffering some problems. See, they enjoyed many years of rich success, but they hadn't really capitalized on it or taken steps to ensure future success. In their market, it is very easy to lose your footing because you are a general retailer. And a general retailer sells a whole lot of stuff, and that means there's a whole lot of other stores that can offer the same stuff. You don't have an exclusive market share because you are not selling exclusive items. If there's another big box across the street, people can go there. And in many cases, it was cheaper at other stores. But the major issue Kmart had was their corporate image. See, Kmart had decided it was a really good idea to basically never update any of their stores in terms of appearance. They stayed pretty much the same for decades. And the problem here is that they wound up in a weird spot where they were sandwiched between two juggernauts of big box stores, Walmart and Target. Walmart was able to do two things that Kmart could not. Their founder, Sam Walton, had set up an extensive and very state-of-the-art logistics and supply chain system for his company. As a result, Walmart could get stuff, just all the stuff, to all their stores way faster and way more regularly than Kmart could ever hope to do. Because of the money saved on these logistics, Walmart could also offer said merchandise at a much lower price, much more regularly than Kmart could. So they had more stuff, and often cheaper than Kmart. The other side of the equation is Target. Target is generally considered a lot nicer than Walmart's. I mean, Walmart is Walmart. You know the kind of people that go to Walmart.
Walmart is racist! Walmart is racist! Walmart is racist! You all better repent! Because the kingdom of heaven is at hand!
But people still go to Walmart because it's cheap. However, Target, targeted the other side of the equation here by focusing on the upscale market. For one thing, Targets are more reminiscent of the old school department stores. They're very nice inside, with helpful and polite staff, and they often sell more expensive things, but high quality stuff. And people will pay extra to not have to go to Walmart generally, if they can afford it. Kmart found themselves in the position where they're viewed as the dirty, dingy, kind of cheap in appearance, like Walmart tends to be. But, at the same time, they had the prices of Target. So you had the worst combination possible out of the two categories. You weren't cheap like Walmart, and you weren't nice like Target. You were the worst of both worlds. By the way, if anyone wants to invest with me to start up a big box chain that is both nice and cheap, I would be totally down, because I think there's a market for that. Anyway, because of this, throughout the 80s and into the 90s, Kmart was starting to be seen as a little more, gross. People just didn't want to go there. It was too old and hadn't been updated at all. They were surpassed by Walmart in terms of the market share by November of 1990. But a re-imaging campaign would have solved all this. Just update Kmart's appearance, make it a lot nicer, redo some of the internals. You could afford to do that. You've been making money, right? Well, they probably could have at first, but they never actually did it, at least not until it was way too late. See, in the meantime, the Suits had decided to stop focusing on Kmart, figuring that their success would last forever, and start buying a bunch of other stores. Other chains were acquired by the corporate office, and much of their attention was focused on fixing those chains to be successful, including Sports Authority, Builders Square, and Walden Books. Now, purchasing other stores to add to your ever-growing market share is a reasonable thing to do, and none of those stores directly competed with Kmart's. So at face value, it's not an unreasonable option, but you cannot lose focus of your core business, which is Kmart. They were so focused on spending loads of money on these other acquisitions and then focusing on them, they kind of forgot that their Kmart's were literally falling apart in some cases. They even discontinued the Blue Light Special to try to save money in 1991, which was a really stupid friggin' thing to do, because that was one of the most commonly associated things within your store. Why go to a Kmart at all at that point? Well, there's a genius idea. A brilliant idea. Let's re-image everything. You should have done that in the beginning of the 1980s, but here we go. They tried to change their overall look, in a lot of different ways, actually, and none of it seemed to work. They dropped the old-style italic K with a turquoise mart, in favor of a more 90s-ish red block letter K, and the word Mart, written in script, contained inside the K. It was a nice logo, don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine. And after this was done, they did start remodeling some of the stores, but they didn't do a very good job of that. Most of the stores still kind of looked the same, even after the remodeling was done, and the suits didn't seem to be able to figure out exactly what the direction of the revamp should really be. Like, yeah, they had the new logo, but surrounding that new logo was a whole bunch of other wacky ideas that didn't really turn out that well in the grand scheme of things. In '92, they tried to enter the Eastern European market by purchasing 13 stores over in the former Czechoslovakia. Those stores were sold off in 1996, so you can see how well that went. And they started offering exclusive merchandise, which, honestly, on paper should have been a good idea. The merch included partnerships with celebrities like Martha Stewart and Kathy Ireland, Jacqueline Smith, Lord Hutton, Talia, and they got a hold of some exclusively licensed stuff related to things like Sesame Street and Disney, and they hired celebrity spokesperson like Rosie O'Donnell, as well as Penny Marshall. All that's great and all, but the stores inside were still seen as the same old Kmart. The reimaging hadn't addressed how cheap and dingy everything looked, and they tried in some categories, because, like I said, around that new logo was a whole bunch of other brands. The Super Kmart Center, also known as the Super Kmart, opened an all-new location on July 25th, 1991, over in Ohio. The Super Kmart featured a full-service grocery and a full-service deli, as well as also having the general merchandise offerings. The idea was to combine the big box store with a grocery store, and that's not a bad call, but the problem was the branding. I think the issue is that people were kind of confused as to what the Supercenter really constituted, and they also had things like Big Kmart. What's the difference here? Well, not really much of one, outside of the food offerings, to be honest. Some stores were rebranded as Big Kmart. In fact, as a kid, I remember my Kmart in my hometown was rebranded that way. But the inside was still pretty much the same old Kmart. Like, yeah, the logo had Big next to it, and technically they did add some new merch. But, Walmart was right across the street, and still cheaper! Granted, it helped them at first, because the reimaging did kind of make people curious as to what all the hubbub was about, and their sales numbers had grown by 10% in 1997, which was good, but this seeming return to success wouldn't last very long. Throughout the 90s, they started spinning off some of the stuff they'd actually spent money to acquire, like Sports Authority, and in September of 1995, they sold off their money-losing in-store auto repair centers over to Penske Corporation, so they could independently operate them as Penske Auto Centers. And in '97, they launched the Kmart Cash Card as a replacement for the paper gift certificates. And by 2000, they and Capital One launched their all-new co-branded MasterCard as a replacement for the private label Kmart credit cards. Yeah, you remember those? You guys know what those are? The store credit cards, the ones you can only use at that store with the ridiculously high interest rates? Yeah, those are great, right? No one likes those. No one likes those. And in July of 2000, Kmart closed 72 underperforming stores, while opening 20 new Big Kmart stores, and converting 12 regular Kmart stores into Super Kmart Center stores. And this whole confliction of brands seemed to be most of the problem here, because, well, think about it. Super Kmart offers all the same stuff as a regular Kmart does, or a Big Kmart, but with the food. What also does that? Walmart. Just regular Walmart. There's no super, there's no big Walmart, it's just friggin' Walmart. It's all the same place. You go there and you know what to find. True, some do vary in size and therefore can have a bit more stuff on occasion, but there's no confusion with the branding here. It's all one thing. Kmart brass didn't seem to understand this at all. They never, at any point, really made any changes to their overall supply chain management, and this wasted so much money. Whereas Walmart had one of the most efficient systems, if not the most efficient system of supply chains in the world, Kmart's looked positively medieval by comparison. They attempted to compete with Walmart in terms of price points, but that didn't work, because Walmart could go lower than they could because of the supply chain issue. And even when they did sometimes beat Walmart in terms of the price, they couldn't beat Walmart in terms of having the items in the store. Often, people would see an item in an ad, go to Kmart, and find that they didn't have any in stock. Walmart, this practically never occurred. Walmart was really good about having supplies in stock. And you have to remember, shopping for regular people is not just a money investment, but a time investment. No one wants to go to two different stores when they're looking for one thing. They want to go to one. Their customer base are regular people who have regular jobs and regular lives, and not everyone wants to spend it all day shopping for that one item you need for your kitchen. They want to go somewhere where they know they're going to have it, and it's going to be at a reasonable price. Walmart was pretty much always the answer over Kmart, because while Kmart sometimes, on occasion, had it cheaper, they often simply didn't have it at all. And on top of not managing their supply chains very well, they often made their suppliers really, really mad by simply not paying them when they had gotten their stuff. For example, in 2001, Sega would actually sue them because Sega had come out with their last ever home video game console, the Dreamcast. Kmart had acquired a lot of those for $25.9 million directly from Sega so they could then sell them for their retail price and make money. That's great and all, but they never paid Sega the full amount. They had shorted them $2.2 million and didn't give them the rest. Sega sued them for this because where's the money?
Where's my money? You gonna give me my money? Where's my money, man?
That same year, they were sued again in August, not by a supplier, but by their competitor. Target sued them because one of Kmart's ad campaigns was called Dare to Compare, where they would push their own price compared to those of, like, Target, for example. But often these ads showed Target's price inaccurately. While it is technically legal to advertise a competitor's prices and compare it to their own, it is not legal to lie about the competitor's prices when compared to your own. Kmart often overinflated what Target's prices actually were. As such, Target sued them. Remember the blue light special thing? You know, the one they stopped doing in 1991 despite it being commonly associated with them? Well, they tried it again in 2001. But they discontinued it in 2002. And they revived it in 2005, but only briefly before they discontinued it again. And they revived it in 2009, only on Saturdays, and then they discontinued it again. And then they revived again in November of 2015. Look, either do it or don't. You shouldn't have stopped it in the first place. But if you're gonna bring it back, actually bring it back, you cowards. Ultimately, none of this matters. The management was a disaster overall. They didn't know how to actually make Kmart profitable in the modern market because they had no foresight. A lot of locations, which had been profitable at first, saw population fluctuations. Where people had once lived around Kmart's, many had left. As such, they were no longer the most convenient option, and the stores had to close. Whereas a lot of Walmarts started in rural territory, and a lot of homes wound up being built around them. Communities developed around Walmarts, whereas communities died around Kmarts. They would file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on January 22, 2002, while under the leadership of their then-chairman, Charles Conaway, and president, Mark Schwartz. Conaway himself honestly wasn't that bad of a businessman, but handling Kmart was just too much for him. He had expanded CVS, and they're still around, but he'd only accepted the offer to take the helm of Kmart along with a loan of $5 million. But this resulted in scandal. Conaway and Schwartz were accused of misleading shareholders and other company officials about the company's financial situation prior to the bankruptcy, while they themselves pocketed millions of dollars. They were also accused of spending Kmart's last remaining cash on things like airplanes, houses, boats, and other luxuries for themselves. Ah, yes, good old corporate corruption. For reference, Conaway would wind up being sued by the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. They found him liable in 2009, and in 2010 he agreed to pay a $5.5 million settlement as a result of this fiasco. But in terms of how this affected Kmart, well, a lot of their money was actually just gone, because some people had decided to just spend it all on themselves when they could have used that money to actually fix their problems. He did accept full blame for the financial losses that Kmart suffered. The company was already in a precarious position before he did that, and he only made it worse. He was forced to step down as Kmart emerged out of bankruptcy because, yes, they did last a little longer than their initial one. Their initial bankruptcy did not result in the entire company shutting down. While Conaway was forced to pay back all the loans he had taken, Kmart's new management opted to close more than 300 stores in the United States, including all of the ones that were in Alaska. They also laid off 34,000 people as part of their restructuring process. They then introduced 5 new stores with a prototype logo, as well as a new layout, and a weird lime green and gray color scheme. This wouldn't last very long, because they realized that while they did have a branding issue, people did recognize the big red K. This green and gray thing, while it might be more modern, just, well, no one really knew that was. Like you could see Kmart, they could see that, but why was it green? Like, why? That wasn't... You're not helping! But the new layout was appreciated. They had wider aisles and improved selection and lighting. The stores did look more modern inside, which is something they'd been struggling with for years. The problem here was their financial situation. They simply could no longer afford a full-scale rollout of the new scheme, a new scheme that likely would have saved them had it been done 10 years prior to now. And the prototype logo was abandoned for the Kmart orange concept, which is pretty much just the red still with the K. It's more recognizable. On January 13th, 2003, they closed 326 stores due to lack of profitability of those locations. On May 6, 2003, they actually did emerge from bankruptcy protection as a subsidiary of the new Kmart Holding Corporation. They began trading back on the stock market again, but they were a shell of what they once were. They had lost a lot of ground having to close all those locations, and they were much smaller than both Target and Walmart. Companies that, mind you, were part of the reason they were in bankruptcy in the first place. But their new chief executive, Edward Lampert, was at first rather positive. He was good with numbers, and he set about correcting their balance sheet, reducing inventory that simply wasn't selling, cutting costs where he could, as well as closing the underperforming locations. And at first, this actually seemed to work. By the fourth quarter of 2003, they posted their first profitable quarter in 3 years. In 2004, they unveiled the new logo, and by that, I mean a big red K. I told you, they know what they are. Just accept it. You are a red K. You are a red special K. Deal with it. And they started back on that trend of having exclusive deals and exclusive promotions. In 2004, they worked with E! Entertainment Television for a new clothing brand called Attention. It would only be sold in Kmart's. Even prior to that, they had a similar deal with the WB network, to have the cast of 5 of their shows only wear Kmart-branded clothing, which is an interesting idea, but it never really panned out that well. In 2004, they launched their Kmart Rewards credit card. Oh goody, another one of those. I'm so thrilled. Nobody likes these. Stop doing that. And that same year, they decided to make what I personally view as a mistake. Kmart's management felt they couldn't survive on their own, even though they were starting to make money. It was theoretically possible for them to maybe not wind up as big as Walmart or Target, but have a profitable niche corner of the sector. They had finally re-imaged themselves properly, and people, especially older generations, still remembered Kmart and still enjoyed them. They were trying to bring back blue light specials, though it was off and on. They were starting to do things that were smart. And then they announced their intention to purchase Sears for $11 billion. You fools. I don't know why Kmart management thought this was a good idea. I don't know who authorized this. I don't know if it was more than one person. Maybe it was only Lampert's idea. I don't know. What I do know is that this was a mistake. Sears was once the #1 retail chain in America, so you might think this was a good idea, but by the early 2000s they were on a steep, heavy, agonizingly painful decline. They are their own story, and merging with Kmart didn't help at all. Sears was a sinking ship, and Kmart wound up kind of being dragged down with them. As part of the merger, Kmart Holding Corporation was transferred to the brand new Sears Holding Corporation, and that corporation would directly purchase Sears. This new corporation would operate both stores under their associated brands, but already this was a big mistake, because while Sears was no longer a major competitor of Kmart, Walmart and Target were, they were still a competitor. Sears is a big box store, a bit more old school, but they are a big box store. They wound up with 2 brands, 2 different types of store. They were competing for the same market. You fools! Why would you do that. You don't compete with yourself. The result here is that Kmart's were competed with by Sears, and Sears was competed with by Kmart's, and neither wound up being profitable as a result. But they kind of attempted to combine them in a weird way. They introduced the Sears Essentials store format, which was effectively a hybrid of the two. Granted, both stores already kind of sold the same stuff anyway. Maybe Sears was a bit more upscale, sure, and if you combined every store that way, that might have helped. They didn't. It didn't last long either. In 2006, they discontinued the Sears Essentials named, and renamed all of those to Sears Grand Stores, because this is the company that doesn't know what it is. What is your name? What is your logo? You've changed Kmart's logo alone like 5 times in this same story. I'm not sure the logo is the problem, guys. I think the problem is all of you not understanding what market shares are. By 2009, they had a new prototype that was in 280 stores for a new imaging, which changed the typical white and blue look to orange and brown. The shelf heights were also lowered to create better sight lines, and that was good. So they were doing some things right, but this wasn't helping with eating your own tail, so to speak. But someone had to have known that because they started combining a lot of elements of Sears into the Kmart stores. For example, Penske, who had taken over the auto centers, bailed out of Kmart after the bankruptcy thing and the fact that Kmart wasn't giving them their money either. So those were replaced with Sears auto centers, which actually used to be a pretty big thing. And they started opening Sears branded appliance stores inside Kmart, because one of the big draws of Sears was their appliance selection. All this tells me that the suits had to have known that both were competing with each other, so they had to start merging them into one solid unit if they weren't going to destroy themselves, but they weren't doing that quickly enough. While in 2009, they reported their first year-over-year sales increase of just 0.5% since 2005. Not great, but hey, up. We like up. It was pretty much all downhill from there. Things were an absolute disaster for both Sears and Kmart after 2010. As you can imagine, the holiday season is huge for big box stores because, Christmas shopping. Everyone does Christmas shopping. Black Friday, you ever been there? I hate it too, it's okay. But people are more inclined to shop for gifts and the like, so it's huge for retailers of all kinds. And of course, big box especially loves the holiday season. Well, Kmart and Sears were seemingly overlooked by the general public during the 2011 holiday season. Basically, nobody went there. Despite heavy spending on things like promotion and sales, everyone just went to Target, Walmart, or anywhere else. No one went to Kmart or Sears, and it was a disaster. They had lost so much money, and mind you, reporting a loss for a retailer during the holiday season is a death blow. That is the worst thing you could possibly see, because even dying brands, stores that are struggling, will usually see a big uptick and even profits during the holiday quarter. Even if they aren't a popular chain, people will still go there looking for great deals on gifts. Kmart and Sears didn't even get that year. It was horrid. As a result, they had no choice but to start closing stores. Between 100 and 120 were slated to be shut down over the following years. And in 2014, news broke that Kmart had started liquidating dozens of different locations all across the US. Stores started being shut down left and right, and no one was even sure exactly what the pattern was. They seemed to be shut down whenever. They spun off a few of the smaller retailers they still had, and that same year, 2014, they suffered a data breach. Which is a story we've heard often enough in the modern day. Hackers are gonna hack. Remember those store credit cards they issued? Yeah. The hackers went after that data. And while the investigation that followed did show that no personal information or debit PIN numbers or anything like that, anything important, was actually obtained, it was still a bad look for them. People already weren't shopping there, and now they didn't trust them. Then they got sued due to a U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission disability discrimination lawsuit. Yeah, they got sued for one of those, and had to pay a settlement of just a little over $100,000, so not that bad in the grand scheme of things, but this was public, people knew about it, and it was a really bad look for them. Basically, a man was applying for a job, but he had kidney disease and was on dialysis. They wanted him to take a drug test, which is totally normal for most retailers, but because of the kidney disease, he couldn't actually provide a urine sample. So he requested reasonable accommodation, like a blood test or another related drug test. There are other ways to do it besides a urine sample. Kmart refused, and denied his candidacy for employment. It was decided that this was discriminatory because there were other options, and it wasn't like he was trying to hide anything. The man had kidney disease and he was trying to work. What are you doing? Everyone hated that. In April of 2016, they announced they were liquidating 68 more stores. Eddie Lambert tried to remain positive, and he said at that time that there were no plans to close the Kmart format, and that they were working hard to make it a more fun, engaging place to shop, powered by our integrated retail innovations and shop your way. Yeah, that didn't help, Eddie. You were trying, though. I gotta give you that. In December of 2016, 25 more locations were slated for closure by early 2017. In January of that year, they announced that 78 more were closed. You see what's happening here? They're just closing. Wherever. It doesn't matter. If you have a Kmart in your city, it's probably closing. That's what was going on between 2016 and 2017. Neither Kmart nor Sears even ran any television advertisements during the 2017 holiday season, because by that time, another problem they were dealing with was online retailers. Hello, Amazon! How you doing? They wanted to try to focus on digital marketing in 2017, but by that time, it was way too late for that. Walmart and Target had already had that kind of thing by the early 2010s at the latest. Never mind Amazon existing. It is 2017 and you're getting in digital marketing now? Bro! As you can imagine, the 2017 holiday season was also a complete total disaster, and they closed even more stores in 2018. That particular list of closures included the only remaining Super Kmart location in Warren, Ohio. Its closure officially rendered the Super Kmart format extinct. And by this point, most financial analysts had decided that both brands, Kmart and Sears, had a very high chance of completely disappearing within that year. They didn't that year, but they were getting there. They weirdly announced a small profit during the fourth quarter of 2017, but investors didn't believe that. For one thing, they knew the holiday season had been bad. Also, they figured out that it was probably due to the tax refunds that Sears Holdings had received, and not because of the sales, because the sales were still falling. Stores on both ends continued to close over the course of 2018, and on October 15th of that year, Sears Holdings filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and announced that they would close even more locations, a total of 142 stores, which included 63 Kmarts. That round of closures encompassed the last Kmart located in Arkansas, the last two in Georgia, and the last two in Kansas. Mind you, this was their second bankruptcy within just 16 years, which is a bad look for any company. In early January of 2019, they had a proposal and wanted to keep at least 202 Kmart stores open along with 223 Sears. But this was all assuming they could even survive the bankruptcy process, and it kinda looked bleak at that point. But the proposed locations were in very highly populated coastal regions, places they knew that even if they weren't very popular, they would still generate money, because people would still shop there if it existed, unless there's a Walmart or Target next door, in which case everyone's gonna go there. They did almost enter Chapter 7, liquidation, but the court judge responsible for the case ordered them to return to the negotiating table and try to work out a new deal to prevent that from happening, because if they closed entirely, that'd be a lot of lost jobs. This new arrangement would keep the lights on at 400 different locations between Sears and Kmart, and it seemed like they might survive a little longer until their debtors caught up with them. See, of course, in order to stay afloat during this whole time when they weren't making money, they took out lots of lines of credit, and a lot of those, really wanted their money now, such as the Simon Property Group.
Don't make a fool out of me, man! Don't make a fool out of me! I want my money!
They requested that the bankruptcy court rule to liquidate them instead of allowing any reorganization. Everything that followed was a lot of accusations of mismanagement and things like that, but by February of 2019 it was announced that the US bankruptcy judge had approved the sale of the most lucrative part of Sears Holdings to Edward Lampert, which allowed the surviving part of the company that operated both Sears and Kmart to remain in business at the expense of suppliers, landlords, employees, pensioners, the US government, and other creditors. That would mean Kmart would still have 202 locations after the sale was to be completed. But even after all this happened, nothing really changed. Outside of those 202, the remaining stores were liquidated to partially pay off the creditors. But in May, the downhill slope just kept on rolling. They closed the store in Walla Walla, Washington, which made it the first post-bankruptcy closure for the brand since being bought. This trend of continuing to close stores is getting repetitive, I know, and yeah, that kept happening. To catch you up, by April of 2022, there are only 3 Kmarts left within the continental United States. One is in Miami, Florida, one is in Westwood, New Jersey, and one is in Bridgehampton, New York. And by that I mean, there's only 2. The Westwood location closed in late 2023. There are only 6 Kmarts left across the entire world. 2 in the continental United States, 1 in Guam, and 3 in the US Virgin Islands. What an absolute train wreck. The real question at this point is, will Kmart ever have a resurgence? Will they ever be as large as they were? Will they come back to take vengeance upon those that slighted them, destroying the hated Walmart and Target, and taking the mass market for themselves? No. No, I can almost guarantee that will never happen. I, like many people, view Kmart as a relic of the past. Even just their name, their association, causes people to think of, well, the past, not now. They don't have a place in the modern market anymore. Even if they did somehow resurge, someone buys the name, invests just a whole bunch of money, they start opening stores, I don't think they do very well. Because once Walmart and Target found their footing, Kmart didn't have a place in the market even back then. It was only a slow, painful, downhill struggle to try to figure out what they were doing wrong. And in the end, they never really did figure it out. The brand is now associated with failure, and it's basically impossible to come back from that once that's how the general public looks at you. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Road Videos, Lord Off 444, Iserfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Will Jack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Caleb Brainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Zielinski, Jared Brussel, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitson 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Trevel, Hayden DeGrow, Metal for Life Guy, No, Kurt Forkum, Ohio Trucker 1, Mr. Sleepy, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Liam Wright, Morris Silman Productions, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Western Colorado History, Ryan Wehofer, DeRaushi, Your Mom Liked It, Windy City Rails, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Murder Drone Stall, Eric Hutton, AET Museum, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, individual of fun, farewell.